Sage watched the raindrops drip down the window pane and pondered the events that had brought her to this moment. 5 years with Charles felt like an eternity, captured instantly. Their cosy apartment was the witness of countless moments that wove together their happiness. Evenings under a blanket with hot cocoa and old movies, breakfast together under their favourite music. Secret glances and half-spoken words, a language understood only by the two of them. And of course there was Hadley. She had been a constant in Sage's life, always present, from their school days to Sage's wedding, where Hadley, holding back tears, adjusted her veil and whispered, "You deserve him. He is your other half." On every birthday, every holiday, and every important time, Hadley was always by her side, not just a friend, but a named sister that fate had not given her. The pregnancy test with the 2 lines changed everything. Sage remembered showing it to Charles with trembling hands, expecting to see her joy reflected in his eyes. For a moment she thought she did. His pupils dilated and a storm of emotions crossed his face. He hugged her tightly and whispered, "We'll manage." At the time, she didn't notice the strange phrasing. Not, "I'm happy," or "this is wonderful," but "we'll manage," as if they were facing a natural disaster rather than a new level in their life. From that day forward, Charles began to change. The changes were subtle at first, like the early signs of an illness that could be mistaken for fatigue. He started staying late at work, first an hour, then 2, then entire evenings. His smile no longer held the warmth that made her heart light. Their conversations, once lasting for hours, turned into quick exchanges of information. "Dinner's in the fridge. I paid the utilities. Go to sleep without me." At night he turned away, and Sage looked at his back, distant and unreachable like a moon. Sometimes she gently placed her hand on his shoulder, and he didn't shake it off, but he didn't react either, as if he didn't feel her touch, and that was worse than rejection. "Charles, what's happening?" she would ask when the silence became too loud. "You seem so distant." "Everything's fine," he would reply, looking past her. "I'm just tired." Meanwhile, Sage's pregnancy was difficult. Morning sickness persisted well into the 2nd trimester. She felt swollen, clumsy, vulnerable, and lonely. Endlessly lonely, despite her husband's presence in the next room. "I feel like Charles is pulling away," she confided in Hadley over a cup of coffee. "It's like he doesn't want this baby." Hadley waved her hand dismissively, her long earrings catching the sunlight. "Sage, you're overthinking it. Men experience expectations differently. He's not used to sharing his emotions. You've always said so yourself." "But he used to be different." "Pregnancy changes not only women." Hadley smiled, though it seemed forced. "You're overly sensitive because of the hormones." Sage wanted to argue that it wasn't just hormones but a sense of impending doom, yet she remained silent. Hadley always knew how to calm her down, but this time her reassurance felt artificial and was rehearsed. Then one morning, Sage felt a strange pain. At first it was a dull, tugging ache that woke Sage with a vague sense of unease. By noon she could barely stand upright, and by evening Charles got her to the hospital, silent and pale, his gaze fixed. The hospital corridor was bright and unforgiving. The doctor's lips moved, but the words reached her consciousness with a delay, as if filtered through water. "I'm sorry, there is no heartbeat. We will have to prepare you for surgery." Charles sat beside her in the corridor, his face a mask of shock and grief. Back straight, hands on knees, gaze fixed on a single point on the wall. He wasn't crying, didn't try to embrace her or whisper words of comfort. He simply sat there like a man waiting for a bus, not a husband who had lost a child with his wife. "Charles?" Sage's voice was hoarse. He blinked as if surfacing from the depths of his thoughts. "Yes," he said, looking at her directly, but without any expression. "Say something, please." He looked at her straight on, but without any emotion. "Everything will be okay," he said, as if reciting a memorized phrase, and turned back to the wall. At home, everything became even worse. The silence that had taken over their apartment rang with the unspoken. Sage drowned in grief, while Charles seemed to have already processed his share of sorrow, if it ever existed, and returned to his routine: work, phone, computer, sleep. A cycle in which there was no room for her or their shared loss. Days turned into nights. Sage slowly crawled out of the abyss. Physically, she was improving. Her body was young, strong and resilient, but her soul refused to heal, especially with no shoulder to lean on. Hadley hadn't answered her calls for a week, citing a business trip. Exactly 1 month after the miscarriage, Charles uttered the words he seemed to have rehearsed for a week. "I'm not happy anymore, Sage." These few words ruined the fragile world Sage had desperately tried to maintain. The day Charles left, there was no drama or scandal, no broken dishes or shouting, only silence. A cold, deafening silence, broken only by the sound of clothes being packed into a suitcase. "Have you been planning this for a long time?" Sage asked, standing in the bedroom doorway, watching him methodically empty the closet. "Does it matter?" He didn't even turn around. "Are you leaving me for someone else?" The question escaped her lips, though she was sure she didn't want to know the answer. His hands paused briefly over the suitcase. "No." He lied so poorly it was almost insulting. "I just need space, time to think." She didn't argue, cling, beg or promise to change. Pride was all she had left. Sage just watched her life fall apart with the detached curiosity of someone observing a building being demolished nearby. When the door closed behind him, she finally allowed herself to cry. And they were not quiet, neat tears, but a deafening, primal wail that erupted from the depths of her being. She screamed until her voice gave out, her throat ached, and her eyes swelled so much they barely opened. And then there was silence and emptiness. Hadley wasn't answering her calls. At first, Sage thought she was still on her business trip, but days turned into weeks, and her best friend seemed to have vanished from her life. She didn't respond to messages or appear online. Then one day her mother called. "Darling, are you sitting down?" Sage's heart clenched with foreboding. "Mum, what happened?" "I'll send you a link, but prepare yourself." The link led to Hadley's Instagram. The first photo hit her like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of her. Charles and Hadley on the beach. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, both smiling openly, happily, without a trace of embarrassment or guilt. The caption read, "Finally free." The post was dated 3 days before the miscarriage. The world tilted. Sage felt nauseous. Her head spun, and a bitter lump rose in her throat. "Sage? Sage, are you there?" Her mother's worried voice brought her back to reality. "Yes, Mum," she whispered. "I'm here." "I'm so sorry, dear. I thought you should know." "Thanks, Mum. I'll call you later." Sage scrolled through the photos, each one a stab of betrayal. Charles and Hadley in a fancy restaurant. Hadley behind the wheel of his car, the two of them at the waterfront, in a park, in a cosy little house. Their smiles and embraces told a story of intimacy and deceit, shattering the memories Sage held dear. Every night at work, every cancelled meet-up with Hadley, they had been together, laughing at her naivety, planning their escape. A wave of fury surged within her, darkening her vision and making her ears ring. If they thought she would crumble and disappear, they were sorely mistaken. Sage was not vengeful by nature, but this level of betrayal demanded a response, not to inflict pain, but to restore justice. Charles had been careless, too consumed by his new life to cover his tracks. Their joint accounts revealed every penny spent on their affair. Restaurants, hotels, gifts, all purchased with their shared money, while she saved on lunches, for their future child. The lawyer she hired was impressed by the evidence she had gathered. "With these proofs," he said, "we can expect very favourable divorce terms, especially considering the moral aspect." In court, Charles's infidelity became her trump card. The judge, a discerning older woman, listened to their stories, examined the evidence, and delivered a verdict that left Charles stunned. The apartment remained with Sage, along with half of their savings. She was financially better off than Charles, burdened by debts and a new woman accustomed to expensive gifts. The divorce did not bring immediate relief. The wound of betrayal would not heal overnight. But for the first time in months, Sage felt a glimmer of hope. She had survived, stood her ground, and was moving forward. The home, once filled with memories of him, was gradually transformed beyond recognition. New furniture, new colours, new energy. It was no longer their home, it was hers. A sanctuary, a fortress, a place of strength. Work, to which she had previously given only a part of herself, became the focus of her energy. Promotions, salary increases, and recognition from colleagues followed. She transformed, both externally and internally. A new haircut, a new style, and newfound confidence in every gesture and word. Nightmares of loss, betrayal, and loneliness still haunted her, but now, waking up in tears, she knew she could face each day. It was during this period of change that she met Thomas. Not in a bar or through a dating app, but in a bookstore, where they both reached for the same book. Their hands touched and they laughed at the awkward moment. Thomas was different from Charles in every way. His appearance, manner of speaking, and outlook on life. An artist who saw beauty in the mundane and could convey it to others. Their first date lasted until dawn, filled with conversations that jumped from topic to topic, marvelling at similarities and exploring differences. When he walked her home, he didn't try to kiss her, but gently squeezed her hand and asked if he could see her again. Sage took her time. The trauma of betrayal had taught her caution. But with each day, each meeting and each conversation, fear retreated, replaced by something new, a feeling both strong and fragile, which she hesitated to call love, but which steadily grew, filling her life with light. A year later, they moved in together. 6 months after that, she became pregnant. Fear of loss lingered until the birth, but Thomas was there, patient and understanding, ready to drive across town for oranges in the middle of the night or massage her swollen feet for hours. When little Fiona was born, a mirror image of her mother, with her father's smile, Sage knew that the circle had closed. What was lost had been returned, albeit in a different form. The pain didn't vanish completely. It transformed into wisdom and gratitude for everything she now had. She built a life, a real one, not just for show on social media, a life filled with ordinary moments of happiness. Saturday morning pancakes, evening walks in the park, lullabies, first steps, first words, first drawings proudly displayed on the fridge. One evening, returning home after visiting her parents, Sage stopped at a gas station. Fiona was sleeping peacefully in her car seat, and Sage moved quickly to fill up the car, pay, and leave before the child woke up. And then she saw them, Charles and Hadley. It was strange to encounter ghosts from her past. The miserable couple didn't notice her, too engrossed in an argument, unfolding right in the middle of the gas station convenience store. Their car, worn and rusted, was far from the luxury vehicle Charles used to cherish. He looked haggard, with shadows under his eyes. His once expensive clothes were replaced by nondescript attire, and Hadley, always so well-groomed and stylish, looked like a worn-out middle-aged woman, her hair poorly dyed and her makeup exaggerated, emphasizing her wrinkles. Between them, a 3-year-old child stood crying on the floor and ignored by both of the adults. "We haven't got any money for gas," Hadley hissed, waving a plastic card. "You said you transferred it." "You knew we were tight on money," Charles snapped. "You could have held off on the brand bag." Oh, so now it's my fault. Maybe you should remember who gambled away our last savings? Their voices grew louder, their words sharper, and the cashier looked increasingly annoyed. The child wailed even louder. At one point, Hadley seemed to feel Sage's gaze and turned around. Their eyes met, and Sage saw a mix of surprise, disbelief, shame, and envy in Hadley's expression. Hadley looked Sage up and down, taking in her calm demeanour, her wedding ring, and sighed as if deflated. Sage didn't linger. She paid for the gas, got into her car and drove home, where Thomas awaited her with dinner and news about an upcoming exhibition, where Fiona would wake up and demand her favourite bedtime story, where life continued, full and real, built from the ruins of the past. She smiled as she drove through the evening city, not because of her ex-husband's and her ex-best friend's misfortune, but because she knew she had survived and healed. Her life was now filled with love and joy, something the other two, trapped in a web of mutual resentment and shared illusions, might never know. Betrayal left its marks, but these marks signified healing and resilience. They showed that pain was temporary, and that even the darkest nights gave way to dawn. Sometimes that dawn brought a beauty unseen before.